elephants would start to work from home, what would happen? This was a question I asked myself in March 2020. It was the beginning of the lockdown. I was not able to leave my house and I was sitting there at home with nothing to do. And I asked myself this question, what would happen if a group of elephants would encounter the same thing as what we human beings did, which is because coronaviruses, they actually come from animals, and animals also have experience in dealing with viruses. And what would happen if a group of elephants would be together and they were infecting each other with a virus? What would they do? Because we human beings, ultimately, we also used to live in herds, just on the savannah, like elephants do. So it's often very interesting to see what animals will do with the same issues as what we human beings have. So I asked myself this question. Science, ladies and gentlemen, sometimes begins with very simple and very childish questions. My name is Killian Wawoe. I'm a professor of organizational psychology at Vrije Universiteit, Amsterdam. And normally I would love to be addressing you in real life. Actually, I would even love more to come to Namibia or any other place in Africa to meet you all in real life, but unfortunately, due to the COVID situation, that is not possible. Now, I'm addressing you now here from Amsterdam, and I would like to tell you a little bit more about the research that I have been doing during the pandemic. And during the pandemic, I asked myself questions like I just asked you, what happens if a group of elephants would start to work from home? What I would like to do in the time that I have is tell you a little bit about the crisis before the crisis. So something about working in groups and what are the issues that we already had prior to Corona. I want to tell you a little bit about the research I've done during Corona. So during the lockdown, I asked employees, what is it like to work from home? What do you like? What is difficult for you now that you're working from home? And what do you want to stop, start, and continue when this all is over? And then I would like to finalize with giving you a couple of advices on what can we do with the lessons learned during the lockdown. I have to admit, I've called my book Work Post-Corona, and I have to admit that this is getting a more and more difficult title because what is post-Corona? Maybe it's something like post-flu. In other words, Corona is here to stay. But what I mean is we were all forced to work from home. So what do we know about, what have we learned during that period of time? And for me as an organizational psychologist, of course, it was disastrous in many ways, but let's say research-wise, it's the most interesting experiment in the history of human resources. We've never had a situation that the whole world all of a sudden was going to work from home. Now, let's go back to that question. What happens if a group of elephants would start to work from home? Now, let's assume there is a group of elephants here in Namibia, and this group of elephants is suffering from a coronavirus, and they are getting together. They're getting together and they ask themselves, okay, if we infect each other, in fact, we are a danger for each other. So let's start. Let's say 5 days a week, we're going to disperse. We're going to all separate for 5 days a week. And then 2 days a week, we're going to reconvene and be together as a group. So in other words, the herd is going to be hybrid. Now, imagine what would happen if a herd of elephants would become hybrid, and for 5 days a week, they would not be together. What would the conversation look like after 5 days? I've asked myself this question. Again, it sounds so stupid, but on the other hand, coronaviruses come from animals, so they also must have a way to deal with this. Could something, what they do, inspire us to do things differently? Now, I imagine this conversation after 5 days. I think Mother Elephant would say, well, to be honest, it was a bit uncomfortable because I didn't see you for 5 days. I like to control. I like to manage you. I like to be in touch with you, know what you do. So for me, this last 5 days have been a little bit inconvenient. Okay. Then there's a senior elephant, a senior lady who says, well, to be honest, for me, it was kind of convenient because normally I have to wait for all the others and actually know the way. So for me, it was quite pleasant. Let's continue this. Maybe not 5 days a week, but hey, maybe 3 or so. And then there comes another senior elephant that says, well, actually, I was a bit lonely. And there was another elephant that said, well, for me, it's so-so, but 1 day a week alone would be nice. I get a little bit of rest, etc. And then comes the small elephant, the young elephant. What would they say after 5 days of being without the group? Well, most likely, they're not going to say anything because they are dead. Elephants live in groups, not because of their productivity, not because of their well-being. They live together in a group for the very simple reason that a group is a way of survival. A group is a survival mechanism, and a group is not made around the strongest elephant. It is not made around the average elephant. It is made around the weakest elephant. We are born weak. We will die weak, and in the middle, it's the strongest of the group that take care of you. And as Charles Darwin, the great biologist, said, is that those species who had social genes, so people who were focused on others, people who would like to be with others, had a bigger chance of survival. Now this is crucial because I'm going to talk about working from home, hybrid working, and give it a name. And when I talk to companies, to come to the conclusion of today's talk, is when I talk to companies, they tell me, and they're really happy with working from home. We can save costs, and it's efficient, and we can have less traffic jams and stuff. But you forget one thing, is that you should not ask yourself in terms of productivity, is it nice? You should also not ask yourself alone, how do we feel while working from home? The question is, are we able to survive as a group? And if you go back to Mother Nature, groups need to be together in order to transfer knowledge and to stay alive as a group, not as individuals. Okay, so let's translate this into this question of working from home. So the question should not be, how did you like to work from home? Then I ask you, can you tell me what you would like to have post-corona or post-lockdown? What is your ideal model of working together? That's not the question. It's not about you, it's about us. Now, I took that as a starting point from my research. So the place where I ended up in my research and where I will end up in this talk will be a different place than most companies ended up. It's all about us, and it's not about you. Okay, so let's take this as a starting point. Now, we organizational psychologists, we've been doing research regarding working in groups for the last 100 years or so, and a couple of things that came out of that which are very interesting. So let's talk about what we knew already about working in groups prior to Corona. Yeah, so let's talk about working in a group prior to Corona. What did we know? I want to ask you a quiz question. So, okay, get yourself a pen and a piece of paper. Please do. Get yourself a pen and a piece of paper. I'm going to ask you a question. Now, we have been doing research regarding work and what motivates us at work. This is prior to Corona. Okay, and what we did is we did diary studies, and in these diary studies, we asked employees, please write down what you are doing during the working day, and then let me know to what extent does the activity that you're doing motivate you, yes or no. Okay, and in what and to what extent. Now, I would like to ask you, please write down from the following 5 answers, which one of these 5 do you think is the most motivating? Okay, so there we go. Is that A, moments during your working day that you receive financial incentives? Yeah, so you do something and you know this is going to deliver me extra money. 1, A. B, is it interpersonal support? So you're doing something during the working day and you get support from others. C, acknowledgement for good work. So you do something and you get a tap on the shoulder. D, making progress. You do something and you feel that you're making progress. And E is you do something and you have clear goals. Please write down which of these 5 do you think is the most motivating. Now, for the last, I would say, 10 years, almost 100,000 people went through this exercise. And what turns out? First of all, it turns out that almost nobody says A. That's interesting, because I'm an organizational psychologist. I used to work in the banking industry for 10 years, switched careers to academia. And if there's one thing that people always ask me or always think is, I need to motivate my people with money. Our staff is not motivating, we need to pay them more. And it turns out that most people intuitively feel that that's not the correct answer, which is true. Yeah, so financial incentives are not the main motivator for professionals in their job. Okay, so A is not the correct answer, and many of you will not have said A. Yeah, so A is not the correct answer. If you ask managers, what do you think motivates your people most, they will say C. And most of the people in this group would have said C too. Yeah, so what motivates people most? It's acknowledgement for good work. Well, the good news is it's not a stupid answer. Of course, people are happy when they get acknowledgement for good work, but it's not the number one. The number one is D, making progress. Now, this is crucial. So what do people like in their jobs? And we're talking not about during the pandemic or post. No, we're already talking past, pre-COVID. We already knew that the number one motivator at work is making progress. I started my story about telling you about a herd of elephants. And that was not a coincidence, because the elephants will come back almost every slide. And this is the first time. What is the essence of a group? It's knowledge transfer. So in our DNA, what we have, which a very strong, innate desire to grow. Everything in nature that is not growing is dead. So growth and adapting to the environment and acquiring new skills is a survival mechanism as an individual and also as a group, making sure knowledge is transferred from one person to the other. So making progress. And for those of you who play a musical instrument or are engaged in sports, you probably know that a good coach is not somebody who's shouting at you how great you are, but is someone who wants you to be the best version of yourself. Yeah, it's making progress. So the moments during the working day that we're making progress are the moments that we value most. People want to make progress. Of course, they want to have acknowledgement every now and then. They like to get support. Yes, financial incentives. Of course, we want to make money. We want to have clear goals. But what is the number one motivator during our working day? It's making progress. Okay, if we go back to our nature as human beings, the progress principle, this is how Teresa Amabile called this, is the progress principle is something that dates back to the times that we were living in herds, that we human beings need to grow constantly in order to stay alive. Okay, so that motivates us a lot. If I would write a constitution of human resources, if you would ask me what is the essence of human resource, if you would ask me for your companies, if you work in a company or you know a company that you're going to work with, or just name me a company wherever in the world, if I had to write an HR strategy for your company, it would be growth through others. Yeah, the essence of the company, the essence of working together as a group is knowledge transfer. That's why I called my latest book The Corporate Brain. The corporate brain, and with that I mean, if you have 1,000 people working in a company, it is a collective brain of 1,500 kilograms. Yeah, a brain is on average around 1.5 kilos. So 1,000 people is 1,500 kilos of brain. And the interaction between those 1,000 people, the interaction of within the corporate brain, that's where the power of your company is. Now, how do you make sure this happens? What's the moment of truth? The moment that my brain connects to your brain. That's what we need to achieve. Okay, article number 1 in the Constitution of Human Resources, people need growth. They want growth. Okay, so that's one. There's already, for let's say 50 years, a lot of research done on what motivates people at work. So the number 1, and that's, let's say, I think the most interesting finding in organizational psychology for the last, let's say, 10 years is that most likely growth is the number 1. Is there also a number 2 or a number 3? Yes, there is. So first of all, people want to make progress, but secondly, they also want to have autonomy. Now, that sounds like a paradox. So you want to grow, you want to learn from others, but you also want to be autonomous. But for those of you who take care of children or have raised children or have to deal with children on a regular basis, you know that if you give a child autonomy, it's actually a function of learning. Yeah, so a child that can do something should do that in order to trial and error. That's part of a learning process. So the herd, and there we go again, a herd is a safety net. Yeah, it's not a mattress. It's not, this relaxing thing like, the herd will take care of me. No, everything you can do yourself, you should do yourself. But the moment that you need the herd should be there. Yeah, so autonomy. So we have this. We are very paradoxical creatures that we want to be part of a group, but at the same time we want to be ourselves. For everybody who's in an intimate relation, probably understands what I'm talking about. You want to be connected. You want to be autonomous. But this dates back to the herd again, the herd of elephants, where all the elephants should do whatever they think is best, as long as they always support the group. So I said in the beginning that a hybrid herd doesn't make a lot of sense. Yeah, so it doesn't make sense to be away from the herd for 5 days a week and then 2 days a week you're going to be together. On the other hand, it's also not the case that a herd of elephants is always together and that everybody can always see everyone. That's also not good. So do as much as you can yourself, but always be connected. And you probably can hear me already flash forward talking about hybrid working, what it should be like, that it's about the quality of the connection between the individuals. I'll come back to that later. Good. So the Constitution of Human Resources. 1, we want to make progress. We want to learn from each other. 2, we want to be autonomous. We want to have self-direction, make our decisions ourselves, etc. And the last thing is relatedness. We want to be connected with other people. We want to feel safe. We want to be accepted. We want to be part of a group. Just the idea of being part of a group is something that we really like doing. Now, I have been to jail many times in my life. Don't worry, I wasn't an inmate, I was a volunteer. But one of the things I noticed when I came into a prison is that these are the 3 elements that society takes away from you when they want to punish you. You cannot make progress in a jail. It's a very boring place. There's less autonomy, and you're not related to the ones that you really love. Okay, so actually, flash forward, when we asked people during the lockdown, how do you feel? People talked about jail many times. Yeah, so people said, I feel like in jail. So because what we take away from you in that instance, what we take away from you is the essence of you as a human being. We take away your chance of progress, your chance of self-direction, and your relatedness to the ones that you love. So if you're angry, this is what we take away from you. Now, also here you see the herd of elephants back again. We human beings want to make progress from each other. We human beings like to have self-direction, and we human beings like to be connected with others. We are, in essence, not really different than this group of elephants. Okay, that's the starting point. This is what we knew prior to the lockdown, prior to COVID-19. We knew that these three elements were the basic elements of work. Okay, the constitution of HR. Now, then the lockdown came, and all of a sudden, we were bounded to work. Well, I couldn't work from any other place than from home. And then I wanted to do research on, okay, what does this do with productivity? You know, what does this do with engagement? What does this do with well-being? But before answering that question, I went through this constitution of HR and asked everybody, what is it? How do you perceive relatedness, productivity, etc. during working from home? Well, what happened is that if we go back to these three elements, what happened to progress during the lockdown? I asked people, so tell me, you're now at home. So I did all these interviews online and I said, hey, you know, what about your progress? What happens? There's one group that said, I made some progress in terms of digital skills. So I made some progress, but most people said, you know, in terms of learning, it's less. But what is the group that suffered most? There we go. And I will say that 3 times in a row, I can already tell you, the young elephants. So the young employees were the ones that were suffering most from the fact that they didn't have a learning experience. If you're only on Zoom, if you're only on Teams or whatever, you learn less. And who's suffering from that? The people that need to learn most. And for those of you who are a little bit more senior, where did you learn your profession? Probably by watching what other people are doing. That whole learning by observing is taken away from you online. Okay, so can we make progress? Less. Is it a problem? Well, if you're experienced, no. If you're unexperienced, that's a problem. Autonomy. If you give people a lot of autonomy and say, okay, you can do whatever you like during the working day, it's up to you. Yeah, that's really great if you know what to do. So if you're experienced, if you are a very senior person, you get autonomy, it's great. If you give autonomy to a young elephant, they die. You know, if you say, you know, this is the wild world, go to the savannah, have fun, they don't come back because they have no clue. Yeah, so autonomy is only great if you know what to do. And relatedness, who suffered the most? People who did not have a relationship at home, who were living at home alone anyway, suffered most. But the people who did not have a network at work, and there again, the young employees, they suffered most. Okay, conclusion. There is, during the lockdown, what we know in terms of the let's say the constitution of HR, we know that some people suffered a lot and other people didn't. Yeah, so there's a group that really paid the price. There's another group that actually benefited from it. But let's look at productivity, because it could mean that you don't feel so good. That doesn't, you know, that you're not happy, but are we more productive when we work from home? Well, first of all, it turns out that when we work from home, it has gone up for some and it has gone down for others. The thing is that in general, we work more hours. Yeah, so people who work online work more hours because there's no commuting. You don't drive to your work, and because you're not driving to your work, you're driving or commuting by train. You invest that time into your employer. Yeah, so you give time, you give your free time, you give to your employer, so that gives you more hours. So everything when it comes to work, where you can say if you do more, there's more output. For instance, a call center. For instance, if you have to look at certain dossiers or whatever, or if you have to, if you're a teacher and you have to correct other people's work from your students, of course, if you put more hours into your work, more will come out of it. But when it comes to creativity, when it comes to working together, when it comes to interaction, it turns out that productivity, when you're not sitting together, goes down. So what do we know from productivity during the lockdown is that in some cases, let's say simple, repetitive work, and people know what to do. So for instance, a call center, yes, a call center agent that is working from home, assuming that, by the way, the home is a good place to work, that you don't have too much noise and stuff. But if that's the case, you work more hours, you get more productivity. However, if you look at creativity, it turns out, or cooperation, it turns out to be less. The same applied for physical health. It turns out that some people lived much healthier during the lockdown, other people didn't. And mental health and engagement, it turns out the same thing. There's one group that suffered, and there's one group that actually enjoyed it. From my students, who are on average between 18 and 25, around 20 to 25% suffered a lot. So really, feelings of depression, of loneliness was especially prominent in that specific group. Yeah, so what you see is in that group it was pretty bad, and other people actually said, this was the happiest time of my life because I had all the time for myself, etc. Who were the ones that suffered most? Well, first of all, the ones with children, because if your children are at home, especially young children, you cannot concentrate. People who are a little bit more extroverts, who like to be with other people, find it more difficult. Singles, so people who did not have a relationship and were a little bit more lonely. People who were younger, of course, and people with some problems at home. Yeah, living at home, being at home is not easy, and especially if your home is not really suitable for working from home. I can testify, in the middle of the lockdown, my neighbor started to renovate his house. And I can tell you, when you're in the middle of a lecture, like I'm giving now to you, if in the middle of this lecture, somebody's going to drill or start to demolish the home next to me, you can imagine that it's kind of stressful. Okay, so there's one group, and this is where we are now. So there's a group that suffered. There's a group that was happy. Interestingly enough, I belong to the group which scores highest. I have children in the age of 11 and 15 who do not distract me, and who it's very nice to hang out with them. Normally, I don't have that much time with them. I have a very pleasant house with my own working room. I have good Wi-Fi, whereas some of my students, they had to go to the, I'm not joking, to the toilet in order to get privacy. And for me, I can go to my own room. I have a network. I've been working for 25 years. I know a lot of people in different places. I can just pick up the phone and talk to them. I didn't have any problems work-wise to be autonomous because I know what to do. Yeah, I've been giving lectures for the last 10 years or so, and doing the same thing during Corona wasn't a strain for me. So one group suffered, one group was happy. Okay, this makes perfect sense. Now, the solution then is flexibility. So I like to work from home. You do not like to work from home. So the solution is you can go to the office and I am at home. Yeah, and then every now and then I just make sure that I'm there, but let people decide. Let this be an individual decision of flexibility. Here you see Microsoft let employees work from home permanently. The same is with Spotify. The same is with Siemens. You see a couple of examples here next to me. Let people decide themselves, because one group likes it and the other group doesn't like it. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you are still awake and that you've listened to what I've said before, because this is the moment where things go wrong. This is the mistake that almost every company is making. I like to work from home. You do not like to work from home. Let's make this into an individual decision so that I am happy at home and you are happy in the office. And that is a mistake. Why? Because we are group animals. We are a herd. And the question is not so much whether or not I like to work from home, especially me with my 25 years of experience, nice house, network, etc. I can manage, but I have a role to play for you. So what happens now, for instance, my university in Amsterdam, we went into this hybrid working and we can decide for ourselves. And what happens in my university, I only see young people, and my age, my peers, they're at home with their families and their good Wi-Fi and their nice houses, and they don't commute anymore, and they're so super happy with themselves at home. No, but these young people at the university, they need me. We need to connect. We are a herd. So it cannot be the case that the system is built around the strongest. No, it should be all about the weakest. You know, who are the ones that need? It's like, for instance, you have a relationship, and you know the wife says, "I want to see you 5 days a week," and the husband says, "I want to see you 1 day a week," and then you go to the therapist because you don't agree, and the therapist says, "I know a solution." Let everybody decide for themselves. That doesn't make sense, because if I want to be with you, it cannot be the case that you're at home and you're in the office. Okay, so my statement here is, and I hope that I can make you think in a different way, is a company is a herd, and we need to solve this issue collectively. So whether we're not in the office is not only about what you want, but what is good for us. Okay, now the issue is that if we go to the office, what we need is growth. We need to connect. We need to make a corporate brain, my brain connecting to your brain. What happens a lot is what you see here in this picture. So people go to the office and then they switch off with one of the worst and best inventions of the 21st century, which is this thing. It's the noise canceling headset. Yeah, the noise canceling headset, which enables you to switch off, but then you're not connected. So the question is not so much go to the office. We also should ask ourselves what's going to happen there. Actually, today I'm standing here in front of you from my house because I was supposed to go to the university. I found out that my colleague was there as well, and I said, "What are you going to do?" He said, "I've got a Zoom meeting." I said, "I have one too." Can you imagine that in one room I am shouting in his direction and he's shouting at my direction, and you can hear my colleague standing over there talking to another audience? Then I'd rather stay at home. So we have to think about something, which is, we don't only have to ask ourselves with this hybrid working, how many days per week are we going to the office? The question is, what are we going to do there? Yeah, so I'm gradually now talking about hybrid working. We should not ask ourselves, how many days per week are we going to be together? No, the question is, if we are together, what happens? We need to then transfer knowledge. We need to engage. We need to, all these important things. And if you are sitting with your noise canceling headset, or you're shouting at somebody else in a Zoom session, that's not quality. Yeah, and to come back to my relationship again, or relationships, you not ask yourself, how many days per week should we be together? No, it's about the quality of our interaction. If we are together, what happens? Let's look at a solution. Yeah, so basically what we're looking at, what we should have in the office, we need to make progress. So we need to tap into each other's brain. We need to be autonomous, and we want to be related to others. So these are the fundamentals. And unfortunately, there is no high court of human resources. I'm a bit jealous. I'm married to a lawyer, and they have a high court. So if people do not agree, they just go to the high court and they make a decision. Now, what is in essence what is going on here is that the ability to make progress of one group, especially the young people, is conflicting with the autonomy of my group. So I want to be autonomous. I want to be at home. I want to make my own decisions. And the young people say, no, I want to tap into your brain. And if this goes to the high court and says, okay, we have 3 articles in the constitution of HR, but the article of autonomy is of one group is conflicting with the progress of the other, then what is the most important thing? And my conclusion is that the progress of especially the young people, or the progress of those who need it most, goes first. So if there's anyone watching this video of my age, yeah, I'm 48 years of age, or at least who is experienced, even if you're 35 or so, and if you're fine, and if you think you can work from home, if you're so super happy with your nice family and your good Wi-Fi and your nice working room and your lawn and your, not commuting, etc., it's not about you. In essence, it's about those who need you most. And if there is a conflict, we're going to try to reconcile all these different views on working from home. But if it's not possible to get the best of both worlds, you have to be there for the weakest. If you don't want that, become self-employed. Yeah, but as long as you're part of a group, you have an obligation in the group in order to transfer your knowledge, open your brain, and let your knowledge flow to those who need it. Good. This is in terms of when there's, let's say, a conflict, if it's not possible to find a solution. However, let's try to get the best of both worlds. What I did during the lockdown is I asked people, okay, then tell me what you do in the office. What is it what you do there? Tell me, what is the office for you? And what are the things you used to do in the office? And then post-corona or post-lockdown, then what are we going to keep doing in the office and what should we stop doing? Let's have a look. Okay. So I asked people, what do you do? They said, well, a part of my work in the office are things that have to do with creation, cooperation, and coaching. These are the moments, the planned and unplanned moments in the working day or in the working week that my brain connects to your brain. Yeah, so when we become the best version of ourselves. Okay, so there are moments in the working week that we sit together and that we actually connect. So not with a noise canceling headset, not working all by yourself, concentrating in your room, or even in a separate space in the office. No, these are moments that you sit together, learn from each other. 1, 2. It seems that there are moments during the working day or the working week that we connect. Relatedness. Those are the moments that we celebrate our success, that we collide, like, hey man, I didn't see you for a while. How are you doing? Or somebody from another department tells you the latest gossip on what's going on, and you learn from each other and you connect. You build a network or you maintain a network. Okay, so there are moments during the working week that you connect. 3, it turns out that there are moments during the working day that you communicate. I am, for instance, now communicating with you, but there are also moments that you have a Zoom session or that you sit together in a room and that you actually discuss something in a meeting. Now, if you then ask employees, what do you think is going to stay and what is going to go? I think this is the conclusion, is that post-corona, creating cooperation and coaching, the moments that your brain connects with the other brain, that's something we should do in the office. We did that prior to Corona, and that's what we should keep doing. What is the function of the office? Is a place where we communicate, where we create, and where we coach. I hear a lot of companies that say, well, we're going to make our work into a clubhouse. We're gonna or a coffee corner. And that's, I think, not a good description of the office post-corona, because it's not a place for coffee, it's a place for knowledge. It's not a place where, if you want to have fun, if you want to have this wow experience, and I see all these ping pong tables and playing computers and pinball machines and what have you. No, even slides. No, it's not a place for fun. If there's a metaphor, it's a gym for the mind. A good office, you come in more wise than you came in the morning. Yeah, so in the office, there should be moments that we actually connect and let our brains step into each other. Then there are moments of connection, having a drink together, lunching together, celebrating together, etc. Those are things we should not do online. Yeah, many people did a Zoom drinks on Friday. That doesn't work. We are social animals. We need to be in rooms together, have fun together, connect with each other, collide. There needs to be social interaction. Online, this doesn't work. But if there's one huge difference post-corona, is the fact that we've learned that communication is also possible online. I'm standing here now in Amsterdam. Many of you are now in Africa, and I don't necessarily need to take a plane to Africa to tell you this story. Now, this is cheaper, it's easier, so it's possible to connect, to communicate long distance, and the same applies for meetings. However, some meetings will be online, some meetings will be hybrid, but also we need to connect in order to have good communication skills. Sometimes it works much better if we've met before. In this case, today, no problem. I'm here in Europe, many of you are on another place across the globe, fine. Yeah, better for the environment, it's cheaper, etc. So there's really going to be a difference that probably these hybrid meetings, they're going to be more, we're going to see more of that in the future. Okay, so this is the collective part. What is it what I wanted to say? Don't ask yourself how many days are we going to the office? No, ask yourself as well, what are we going to do in the office? Now, what are we going to do? We're going to create, we're going to coach in the office. We're going to decide how many days per week, how many hours per week we're going to be in the office together, and then make sure that we meet each other and coach each other. We have to make sure that every now and then we go to the office to meet each other, have drinks, collide, have lunches, etc., to make sure that we tap into the latest knowledge. However, when it comes to communication and coordination, our meetings, we will do more online. Next to collective activities, there are also a couple of, let's say, individual activities. Where do you concentrate best? Well, that depends. In my case, I concentrate really well at home, so I would like to work more from home when needed. Other people, especially young people who do not have the luxury of having their own house, maybe they want to work more from the office, so we need to cater for that. Make sure that there are rooms that people every now and then can concentrate. Customers, where are we going to meet our customers in the future? Same issue. You know, the primary process has the same question as the secondary process of human resources. In other words, where are we going to meet the customer? Well, maybe in the office, maybe in their office, maybe on the third place. Let's see. Yeah, but not necessarily all in the office anymore. That part will be online. The last one, to my surprise, when I asked the people, what do you think is important? To my surprise, people said health. Because commuting is also healthy. Yeah, we have a moment to switch off and we actually have some physical exercise. People miss that. Yeah, and if there's one thing that we've learned during the lockdown is that if we work hybrid, if we work online, we should think about how to make sure that people spend enough time in with physical exercise. Just as a simple advice, just make sure that all the meetings that we have do not take place for 1 hour, but for 50 minutes, and then make sure that you have 10 minutes of exercise. So we need to have a policy that thinks about physical or well-being, because we know that well-being was already an issue prior to Corona, but of course well-being is also important post-Corona. So if you work more from home, we should think about making sure that people have enough physical exercise. Okay, what is the message that I wanted to tell you here today? Is that a lot of companies across the globe are asking themselves this one question: how are we going to work hybrid, and how many days do you want to work from home post-lockdown? Okay, I sincerely believe that in this question there are 3 mistakes. 1, it's not about you, it's about us. So don't send around the question and say, how many days per week do you want? No, it's not about you, it's about us. It's also not so much about what you want, what your desire is, but it's also what is good. I want to be in my house where I'm, as we speak, I would like to be here like 4 days a week, but it's not good for the group. I have an obligation to the rest of the group, that's why I should be in the office. So that's 2. And it's not about how many days, but it's about what. What are we going to do in the office? Are we going to coexist in the office, not talking to each other? That also doesn't make sense. So what you see here next to me is a model to think about what are the things that we need to look for in the office. Make sure that these are processes that are being organized. Make sure that people talk to each other. Make sure that they celebrate together. Make sure that they connect. And if that is organized in the office, then we can have our hybrid meetings. Then you can concentrate at home or in the office. Then you can meet your customers outside the office, and you can go to the gym on a moment that you think is convenient. Good. Let me finalize this. Let me wrap it up. Now, I started talking about my group of elephants. I said, in essence, we are a herd, and the power of the herd is the group. And a herd is not made around the strongest elephant. It's not made around the average elephant, but it's made around the weakest one. And for 2 days a week, I'm a professor, and for 3 days a week, I'm a consultant. And I've been consulting now a lot of organizations that want to transform into hybrid organizations. And what I've noticed is that they set up these working groups where my generation is dominant. Yeah, so where my generation sits on the first row and says and tells everybody what to do. But the ones that suffered most are obviously also the ones that are not the most vocal. That's one. Secondly, there's one group that is never in your research, and that's the group that is not yet there. So if you have a company, the one who's going to work for you in 2 years' time is not in your research. You cannot ask them questions because they're not there yet. Yeah, so be aware that you have to build a system, not so much for the people that work for you, but for the future, because ultimately your organization should also exist in a couple of years' time. It's all about being sustainable, as in that in the future you will still, you won't stop to exist. Let me finalize with a couple of words. I've written a book. Unfortunately, the book is in Dutch. It's as in the process of being transferred into Russian. I don't think you read Russian. English will come later, but the good news is I've got a white paper with a summary of what I just told you, and I will make sure that you will get a copy of my white paper, and then you can read this whole story again. My name is Killian Wawoe. I'm a professor of organizational psychology, and I want to share with you today is that working from home is something that we have to deal with collectively. It's about us. And let this be the biggest chance in history to kill all the traffic jams, to have less stress at work, and to make sure that people really connect with each other in the office. We should have done that already prior to Corona. This is a historical chance to redesign our work and to actually learn and to benefit from this crisis. I thank you for your attention, and goodbye.